Good evening, sisters and brothers, and welcome. Welcome to New Jersey. My name is Carol Gay. I'm president of the New Jersey State Industrial Union Council, and we're proud to be a host for the Fightback Conference, and I'm happy to be your host this evening. Thank you all for coming. It's not always easy to break away from our day-to-day responsibilities, and we appreciate the fact that you have taken time out of your busy schedules to be here. Many of you have traveled great distances, and we thank you for your sacrifice. We're all here because we care. We're here because we're concerned about the escalating assaults on workers, our families, our communities, and about the threats that seem to grow worse by the day. Threats to seniors, children, veterans, immigrants, attacks on our collective bargaining rights, our public education system, our retirement security, our health and safety. It's sometimes overwhelming, which is exactly why we're here with a common purpose to collectively discuss, strategize, and formulate a powerful fightback action plan against these right-wing corporate and government assaults on the 99%. We're here because workers are struggling to survive, and we understand the importance of taking a hard look. We're not afraid to take a hard look at what's happening economically in our country today. We recognize that the U.S. has the most unequal distribution of wealth and income of any major country on earth. And that inequality is worse today than any other time since the 1920s. Today, the wealthiest 400 individuals in the country own more wealth than the whole bottom half, 150 million Americans. The top 1% owns 40% of the wealth, and 47% of Americans have zero wealth. Their debt outweighs their assets. And it's no wonder. The super wealthy have seen the greatest income gains and the lowest tax rates since the Great Depression. And at the same time, corporate profits are at record-breaking levels. Corporate profits are at a 60-year high. Their share of federal revenue or taxes is at a 60-year low. Corporate tax rates are too low, yes. Corporations take advantage of an abundance of tax loopholes, and trillions of dollars are lost to offshore tax havens. You know who the worst tax dodgers are. Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, Citigroup, GE, Verizon, Hopewell, Merck, Boeing, Microsoft, FedEx, ExxonMobil, Chevron, and the list just goes on and on. But a news story emerged this week. Apple cooked up a scheme to finance a $55 billion stock buyback for its stockholders to avoid paying $9.2 billion in taxes. The $9.2 billion tax bill Apple dodged would have been enough to cover all the major budget cuts caused by sequestration, all of them. So the call to repeal sequestration makes sense on many levels. Bernie Sanders has introduced the Corporate Tax Dodging Prevention Act, S-250, which would end incentives to shift jobs and profits overseas. And Carl Levin's S-268, the Cut Unjustified Tax Loopholes Act, also addresses this problem. And yes, I realize the limitations of legislative proposals, no matter how good they may be. We know who owns Congress and that Congress is totally dysfunctional. But that is exactly why we must be in the streets to keep the pressure on. Our job is to make Congress uncomfortable, and not just Congress, of course, but unresponsive government at any level. Another member of Congress, Keith Ellison, just reminded us to get our feet in the street, make Congress feel the heat. Time doesn't allow me to go into all the tax fixes that I would like to see, but I must mention my favorite, the Robin Hood tax. As you probably know, the Robin Hood tax, or the Wall Street transaction tax, would impose a small tax on each Wall Street stock transaction. This not only provides much needed revenue, but also has a stabilizing effect on the wild speculation. Isn't it time to make Wall Street pay? Yeah. Isn't isn't it time to bail out the people, not the banks? Yes, that's what I say too. Time doesn't allow me to go into all the tax fixes, but we know there are many ways to address the economic reality we're facing. And with your help, we will explore the possibilities. One of the reasons we're here is to broaden and deepen our solidarity network in order to better face these challenges and mount a more powerful and united fight back against these gross inequities. A friend just mentioned a new button she had just seen, and it said, "The system isn't broken, it's fixed." Yes, the system may be rigged against us, but there are many ways to fix income inequality besides the ones I've mentioned already. Instead of talking about cutting Social Security, for instance, which is absolutely unacceptable, let's change the dialogue. We must make it clear that we will not tolerate any cuts, no cuts. If there was ever a need for a line in the sand, it's to save our Social Security system, the best anti-poverty program ever developed. But we need to go further. We need to scrap the cap, raise the income cap on Social Security. Our mantra should be expand and improve Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. The most sensible thing to do is just to keep advocating for Medicare for all. Given the state of our economy today, where the wealth has been redistributed to the top 1%, these are extremely moderate demands. We deserve nothing less than an expanded, improved social safety net. We simply cannot let Obama and Congress get away with this notion of a grand bargain, which we know to be nothing more than a grand sellout, right? Are we going to let them get away with it? No. What we demand is shared prosperity, not shared sacrifice. Shared prosperity, not austerity. Fortunately, the economic case for austerity has collapsed. However, that does not mean right-wing ideologues will give up on it. So it means we must be more adamant than ever in our call for jobs for all, living wage jobs for all. We still have 27 million people who need full-time work, and we know sequestration will continue to slow down the economy. With this deepening crisis, we must demand a bold, new approach. The economy needs a jolt, a new deal, a new, clean, green New Deal. We have a perfect example to follow if we just look back at the New Deal program of the 1930s. The WPA worked wonders. The only mistake made was to end the program too soon before the economy fully recovered. If the corporations and the wealthy were forced to pay their share, a public works program could easily be put in place to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure, maintain our parks, keep public schools and libraries open, fund Head Start, restore the shore, New Jersey, New York, and the Gulf. New Orleans and the Gulf still haven't recovered from the ravages of Katrina. There's so much that could be done. Bold, direct government action could accomplish this. But it's up to us, and that's why we must continue to build our community labor coalitions stronger, broader, and deeper than ever to address these issues that affect us all. And we won't let them get away with scapegoating immigrants either, right?
Right.
Pitting workers one against the other. No, we will not let that happen. We will stand united. Most of you already know that this August we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of Martin Luther King's March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. That's when he delivered his famous I Have a Dream speech. And for some, that defines Martin Luther King Jr. But as we know, he stood for far more than civil rights and racial equality. He died fighting for economic justice. His Poor People's Campaign, his support for African American workers in Memphis, his stand for dignity and respect for all workers, his courageous stand for all workers to have a voice on the job, to have a union, was more threatening to some because he was uniting the workers, black and white, against the same forces we're still fighting today. In his Riverside Church message 1 year before he was assassinated, he warned us against the triple evils of racism, militarism, and materialism. If he were alive today, he would be leading the battle to move the money from the bloated Pentagon budget to meet human needs instead. because he believed that a nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual death. Today, he would be beating the drum for Medicare for all because he proclaimed of all forms of inequality, injustice in health care is the most shocking and the most inhumane. We must remain fully engaged in the struggle for Medicare for all because there are still 50 million people without health care in this country. The victories of the civil rights movement provide valuable lessons for us. Many campaigns were achieved not just through consistent, persistent courage and commitment, but through peaceful, nonviolent resistance and civil disobedience. We must honor Martin Luther King's legacy and his courageous vision by marching on Washington this August. The struggle is far from over, as you know, and it will take unified action to make further progress. Are we up for this challenge? Yes. The crucial question is, of course, how do we accomplish our goals? That's why we're here this weekend. In my humble opinion, we need lots of visibility, lots of street action, lots of direct action. We need a powerful groundswell of grassroots activity. How do we do that? We continue to build stronger bonds of solidarity with our community allies and with one another. We must develop a strong, independent labor movement as well that truly speaks to the needs of the 99%. We must reject and oppose any approach that continues the economic assault on workers, our families, our communities. One thing we know is true: the people united will never be defeated. El pueblo unido jamás vencido. Out to the people, together we are powerful. Thank you. Thank you. And we do have messages from some of our sisters and brothers who wanted to be here but could not be here. So I'd like to just read a few of these messages. In a message received from the United Steelworkers, Daniel Flippo, District 9 Director, wrote, our union supports the thought process and work of this effort. On behalf of Leo Gerard, United Steelworkers President, and our entire union, we wish you a successful conference. And this letter was sent to South Carolina AFL-CIO President Ken Riley and Donna DeWitt, retired President. And as you know, they were both on the original call for this Congress. We also have a message from the California Nurses Association. We are sadly unable to attend, but please extend the CNA's greetings of solidarity to all participants. CNA nurses stand with those fighting the corporate assault on our health and our communities and say it's time for Wall Street to pay us back for the damage they caused. We can build a new sustainable economy with justice for all, including guaranteeing quality health care for all. From the California Nurses Association. Thank you. And one last message from Kevin Gunlock, our brother in Wisconsin, who is so very sorry he could not be here. Solidarity, sisters and brothers. It is with mixed feelings that I am unable to be at Rutgers this evening. Although I regret I could not be among you, I am content. Content because of the work my Wisconsin sisters and brothers are doing in our fight back against those who dishonor and disrespect the human condition. Yet, such mixed feelings are not to be reduced to a dualism, for the beingness of self is much more complex than that. And so is our labor movement, our class struggle, and our rich history, all of which is interwoven with a diversity of ideologies, cultures, communities, and social norms. Our mixed feelings encompass being exhausted, energized, angry, patient, steadfast, resolute, inspired, much more. Although we are exhausted, we are even more so energized. Energized because our local school children coming to Labor Temple to learn about the value of the union. Their exuberance, thirst for knowledge, and yes, experiential wisdom is seemingly unmatched since the Wisconsin uprising. We are angry for what the future holds for our children and what the present is doing to their parents. We are patient, knowing that progress takes time and has its own drawbacks and pitfalls along the way. We are resolute regarding our shared principles. We are also inspired by our labor movement, the dedication of our activists, and the creativity and innovation of our organizers. Inspired by all workers, each of whom is a leader in their own right. Inspired with grassroots movements entailing spontaneity, purpose, focus, vision, and ultimately solidarity. Inspired with workers from all walks of life, with different viewpoints and competing ideologies, complex individuals yet fighting for the simple things in life we used to take for granted. There are so many examples I could give, but alas, I will give one that is pertinent to the conference and Fightback strategy at hand. And to this, I will get to the point. Recently, the South Central Federation of Labor's Executive Board voted to endorse and support having the next Fightback conference in February of 2014 here in Madison, Wisconsin, subject to a vote by the full body of delegates in mid-May. With that, I can say that if Madison is to be the next location for a conference, then I can assure you all, collectively and individually, our resolve will naturally continue. The energy will be infectious, the anger over injustices will remain, the regrets will fade away, as will being content. The patience will be imperative. The exhaustion will exponentially grow. And more importantly, the inspiration will be long-lasting and much more. Thank you, and in solidarity, Kevin Gunlock, President, South Central Federation of Labor, AFL-CIO, Madison, Wisconsin. So we appreciate those messages and wish they could be here with us tonight.